My name is David Mitchell, and I'm 58 years old. For the past 35 years, my wife Sarah and I have built what we thought was a good life in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. I work as a high school history teacher, and Sarah is a nurse at the local hospital. We're not wealthy by any means, but we've always provided for our family with love, dedication, and honest work. Our son Marcus is 26 years old, and until recently, I thought we had raised him well. He graduated from college 3 years ago with a business degree that Sarah and I sacrificed to pay for. We took out a second mortgage on our house, worked extra shifts, and lived on ramen noodles for months just to make sure he could focus on his studies without the burden of student loans. Marcus now works at a tech startup in downtown Denver. He makes good money, drives a nice car, and lives in a trendy apartment in the city. But somewhere along the way, something changed in him. The grateful, humble boy we raised became someone I barely recognize. It started with small things. He'd roll his eyes when I talked about my job. He'd make snide comments about our outdated furniture or our small house. When his friends came over, I noticed how he'd quickly usher them past the living room, as if he was embarrassed by our modest home. "Dad, you really need to update this place," he said one evening, looking around our living room with disgust. "It looks like the 1990s threw up in here." Sarah and I exchanged glances. We had bought that furniture when he was a child, piece by piece, saving up for months for each item. Every piece held memories of family movie nights, birthday celebrations, Christmas mornings. "It's comfortable, son. It serves its purpose," I replied, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Comfortable for who? It's embarrassing. My friends think I grew up poor." The words stung. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. We were middle-class Americans doing our best to provide for our family. But in Marcus's eyes, apparently, that wasn't enough anymore. The tension between Marcus and us grew worse over the months. He rarely visited anymore, and when he did, it was usually because he needed something. Money for a security deposit, help moving furniture, or just a free meal when he was too busy to cook. Sarah tried to maintain the relationship. She'd call him every week, invite him for Sunday dinners, and send care packages to his apartment. But Marcus seemed to see these gestures as annoyances rather than expressions of love. "Mom, you don't need to send me homemade cookies," he told her during one visit. "I can afford to buy food. I'm not a college student anymore." I watched Sarah's face crumble. She had been baking those chocolate chip cookies for him since he was 5 years old. It was her way of showing love, her way of staying connected to the son who seemed to be drifting further away from us with each passing day. "I just thought you might like them," she said quietly. It makes me look like I can't take care of myself. What if my girlfriend sees them?" Ah, the girlfriend. We had heard about Jessica but had never met her. Marcus had been dating her for 8 months, but he seemed reluctant to introduce us. I was beginning to understand why. "When are we going to meet Jessica?" I asked. "I don't know, Dad. Maybe soon. She's really busy with her law practice." A lawyer. That explained a lot. I imagined Marcus felt the need to impress her, to present himself as more sophisticated and successful than his background suggested. But what he didn't understand was that there was nothing shameful about his background. Sarah and I had worked hard to give him opportunities, and we were proud of what we had accomplished as a family. "We'd love to meet her, son. Maybe she could come for dinner this Sunday." "We'll see," Marcus said, but I could tell from his tone that he had no intention of bringing her to our house. That evening, after Marcus left, Sarah cried. I held her in our bed, feeling helpless and confused. How had we failed? How had the boy who used to thank us for everything, who used to tell us we were the best parents in the world, become someone who seemed ashamed of us? 3 months later, Marcus called with news that should have been joyful. He was engaged to Jessica, but instead of excitement, I felt a knot form in my stomach. "That's wonderful, son," Sarah exclaimed when he told us over the phone. "When do we get to meet her? When's the wedding?" "Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about," Marcus said, his voice taking on that tone we had come to dread, the one that meant he was about to say something that would hurt us. Jessica and I have been talking, and we want to have an engagement party next month. How exciting! We'd love to help plan it, Sarah said. Actually, Mum, we've got it covered. Jessica's parents are hosting it at their country club. It's going to be pretty upscale. The message was clear. We weren't upscale enough. Of course we'll be there, I said. Just tell us when and where. There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable pause that made my heart sink. The thing is, Jessica's family is pretty prominent in the legal and business community. Her dad is a federal judge. Her mom sits on several charity boards. This party is going to be important for networking and, well, making the right impression. What are you trying to say, Marcus? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. I need you guys to, I don't know, maybe dress nicely. And maybe don't mention that Dad's a teacher or that Mom works at the public hospital. Jessica's friends might not understand. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, and I felt like I had been punched in the gut. You're ashamed of us, I said. It wasn't a question. I'm not ashamed, Dad. This is important to me. Jessica's world is different. I need to fit in. By lying about who you are, about who raised you, it's not lying. It's just strategic omission. I hung up the phone without another word. Sarah was crying, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't know how to comfort her. Our son, the boy we had sacrificed everything for, was asking us to pretend to be someone else because he was ashamed of who we really were. Against our better judgment, Sarah and I decided to attend the engagement party. We couldn't miss our son's engagement, no matter how much it hurt that he didn't want us there as ourselves. We spent money we didn't have on new clothes. Sarah bought a dress that cost more than our monthly grocery budget, and I rented a suit that made me feel like I was wearing a costume. We looked the part, but we felt like frauds. The Riverside Country Club was the kind of place I had only seen in movies. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, waiters in white gloves carrying champagne on silver trays. Everyone looked like they belonged there, except us. Marcus greeted us at the door, and I barely recognized him. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. His hair was perfectly styled, and he had adopted a way of speaking that sounded nothing like the boy we had raised. "Mother, father," he said formally, kissing Sarah's cheek and shaking my hand like I was a business acquaintance. "Let me introduce you to Jessica." Jessica was beautiful, poised, and clearly from money. She extended a perfectly manicured hand and smiled a smile that never reached her eyes. "David and Sarah," Marcus said, "this is my fiancée, Jessica Hartwell." "It's so nice to finally meet Marcus's parents," Jessica said with practiced politeness. "He's told me so much about you." I wondered what exactly he had told her, given his request that we hide our true professions. "Congratulations on your engagement," Sarah said warmly. "We're so happy for you both." "Thank you. Marcus is such an amazing man, so sophisticated and ambitious. He's told me about his entrepreneurial ventures." I frowned. Entrepreneurial ventures? Marcus worked for someone else's company. But before I could say anything, Marcus quickly steered us away. "Let me introduce you to some people," he said, his hand firmly on my back, guiding us toward a group of well-dressed strangers. As the evening progressed, I began to understand the extent of Marcus's deception. He had created an entire fictional version of our family for Jessica and her social circle. According to the story Marcus had told, I wasn't a high school teacher. I was an educational consultant who advised school districts on curriculum development. Sarah wasn't a nurse at the public hospital. She was a healthcare administrator who oversaw medical facilities. I listened in horror as Marcus embellished our modest middle-class life into something more palatable for his new social circle. Our small three-bedroom house became a quaint property we kept for sentimental reasons while we considered upgrading. My 2010 Honda Civic became a secondary vehicle for local errands. Every lie felt like a betrayal. Every fictional detail was a denial of the life Sarah and I had built, the sacrifices we had made, the honest work we had done to raise him. But the worst was yet to come. As we stood in a circle with Jessica's parents and some of their friends, Judge Hartwell began asking me about my consulting work. "David, Marcus tells me you work in educational development. That must be fascinating work. Which districts do you primarily work with?" I felt the blood drain from my face. Sarah's hand tightened on my arm. Marcus was staring at me with panic in his eyes, silently pleading with me to go along with his lie. "Well, I started, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie about who I was, about the work I loved, about the life Sarah and I had built together. "I'm actually a high school history teacher," I said clearly. "I teach at Jefferson High School here in Denver. I've been there for 22 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Hartwell looked confused, Jessica looked surprised, and Marcus looked furious. "How wonderful," Jessica's mother said with forced politeness. "Teaching is such important work." But I could see the judgment in their eyes, the subtle shift in their posture, as they re-evaluated us based on this new information. We had gone from potential social equals to blue-collar charity cases in their minds. Marcus excused us from the group and pulled us aside, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Dad, what the hell was that?" he hissed. "That was the truth, son. Something you seem to have forgotten how to tell. What happened next will haunt me for the rest of my life." Marcus looked around the room, making sure we were far enough from the other guests, and then he unleashed a torrent of anger that took my breath away. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he said, his voice low but venomous. "Do you understand how important this night was for me?" "Marcus, please calm down," Sarah whispered, glancing nervously at the other guests. "Calm down? Calm down? I've been working for months to build relationships with these people. Jessica's father could open doors for me that you can't even imagine, and you just had to tell the truth, didn't you, Dad? I'm proud of what I do, Marcus. I'm proud of the life your mother and I have built." "Proud?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Proud of what? Of being a small-town teacher who drives a 10-year-old car and lives in a house that hasn't been updated since the Clinton administration?" People were starting to notice our conversation. I could see heads turning, whispers beginning, but Marcus didn't seem to care anymore. The facade he had been maintaining all evening was cracking, and all his resentment was pouring out. "You want to know the truth?" Marcus continued, his voice getting louder. "The truth is that I've spent my entire adult life trying to overcome the embarrassment of my upbringing. Do you know what it's like to bring friends home to that house, to that neighborhood, to parents who think a night out is dinner at Applebee's?" Sarah gasped, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. But Marcus wasn't finished. "I've worked so hard to become someone better than what I came from. And you two just can't help but remind everyone of exactly where I started, can you?" By now, the entire room had gone quiet. Every guest, every waiter, every person in that elegant country club was staring at us. Jessica looked mortified, Judge Hartwell looked disgusted, and Sarah looked broken. "Marcus," I said quietly, "we should talk about this at home." "Home?" Marcus laughed again, even louder this time. "You mean that embarrassing little house where you still have the same furniture you bought when I was in elementary school, where you still eat dinner off plates you got as wedding gifts 30 years ago?" I felt something inside me break. This wasn't just anger or embarrassment talking. This was contempt, pure, undiluted contempt for everything Sarah and I represented. "You know what the saddest part is," Marcus said, looking around the room as if addressing an audience. "They actually think they did a good job raising me. They think their lower-middle-class values and their small-town mentality prepared me for the real world." Sarah and I left the country club that night in complete silence. The drive home felt like the longest 30 minutes of my life. When we got to our house, our embarrassing, outdated, small house that had been filled with love and laughter for 30 years, Sarah went straight to our bedroom and closed the door. I sat in our living room, surrounded by the furniture that Marcus had mocked, looking at the family photos that lined our mantel, pictures of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, graduation days, family vacations to modest destinations that we had saved for months to afford. In every photo, Marcus was smiling. In every memory, he had seemed happy, grateful, loved. When had that changed? When had our love become insufficient? When had our sacrifices become embarrassments? I thought about the second mortgage we had taken out to pay for his college. I thought about the nights Sarah had worked double shifts to help pay for his textbooks. I thought about the times we had gone without so he could have what he needed. I thought about the pride we had felt when he graduated, when he got his first job, when he moved into his own apartment. We had been so proud of the man he was becoming, but apparently the man he was becoming was someone who was ashamed of where he came from. The next morning, Sarah's eyes were red and swollen. She had cried herself to sleep, and I knew she had barely slept at all. "What did we do wrong, David?" she asked me over coffee. "How did we raise a son who could say those things to us, about us?" I didn't have an answer. I had been asking myself the same questions all night. "Maybe we protected him too much," I said. "Maybe we should have made him work harder for things, appreciate what he had more. But we taught him values. We taught him to be grateful, to work hard, to treat people with respect." Apparently those lessons didn't stick. The phone rang that afternoon. It was Marcus, but I let it go to voicemail. Sarah and I weren't ready to talk to him yet. We needed time to process what had happened, to figure out how to move forward. The voicemail he left was brief and cold. "I know you're angry, but you embarrassed me last night. I need some time to figure out how to fix this with Jessica's family. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk." No apology, no acknowledgement of how much he had hurt us. Just anger that we had embarrassed him by being ourselves. 3 months passed without a word from Marcus. 3 months of wondering if we had lost our son forever. 3 months of Sarah crying herself to sleep and me questioning every decision we had made as parents. We tried to go on with our lives. I continued teaching, finding solace in my students who still seemed to respect education and hard work. Sarah continued her nursing, caring for patients who appreciated her dedication and skill. But the silence from Marcus was deafening. We saw his engagement announcement in the local society pages, saw photos of him and Jessica at various charity events and social functions. He looked happy, successful, sophisticated, everything he had wanted to become. But he looked like a stranger. We heard through mutual friends that the wedding was being planned for the following spring. An elaborate affair at the country club with 200 guests and a reception that would cost more than we made in a year. We heard all of this second-hand because our son hadn't spoken to us since that humiliating night. We weren't invited to taste cake flavors or look at venue options or help with any of the planning. We weren't part of his new life at all. "Do you think he'll invite us to the wedding?" Sarah asked one evening. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I hope so. But after what happened, he's still our son, David. No matter what he said, no matter how much he's changed, he's still our boy." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that somewhere inside, the sophisticated, cold young man we had seen at the country club was the boy who used to fall asleep in my lap during bedtime stories, who used to help Sarah bake cookies for his school friends, who used to tell us he loved us every night before bed. But months of silence had worn down my hope. Maybe Marcus had meant every word he said that night. Maybe he really was ashamed of us. Maybe he really did see us as obstacles to the life he wanted to build. Maybe we had lost him forever. 4 months after the country club incident, on a rainy Thursday evening in February, there was a knock at our door. Sarah and I were having dinner, leftover pot roast on our 30-year-old plates, when we heard it. I opened the door to find Marcus standing on our front porch, soaked from the rain, looking nothing like the sophisticated man we had seen at his engagement party. His hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. Sarah appeared behind me, her hand flying to her heart. "Marcus, what's wrong? What happened?" He stepped inside, dripping water on our hardwood floors that we had refinished ourselves 15 years ago. He looked around our living room, the same living room he had mocked so cruelly, as if seeing it for the first time. "Jessica and I broke up," he said simply. Sarah immediately went into mother mode, grabbing towels and guiding him to sit down on our embarrassing old couch. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. What happened?" Marcus sat down heavily and put his head in his hands. "She found out." "Found out what?" I asked. "Everything. The truth about you, about me, about where I really came from." I sat down across from him, my heart racing. "How did she find out?" "Her father had you investigated," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "After the engagement party, he was suspicious about the story I had told, so he hired a private investigator." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Investigated us? Why?" "Because I'm going to be his son-in-law, and he wanted to make sure there were no surprises. The investigator found out everything. That Dad's been a public school teacher for 22 years, that Mom works at Denver General Hospital, that we live in a 200-square-foot house in a middle-class neighborhood, that you drive a Honda Civic with 150,000 miles on it." "And Jessica was upset about that?" Sarah asked. "Jessica was upset that I lied," Marcus said. "She said she could have lived with the truth about my background, but she couldn't live with someone who was ashamed of his own family. The irony was overwhelming. Our son had lost the woman he loved because he was ashamed of us, because he couldn't accept that the life we had built, while modest, was still valuable and worthy of respect." "I'm sorry, son," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything he had put us through, I was sorry he was hurting. "You're sorry?" Marcus looked up at me with confusion in his eyes. "Dad, I said terrible things to you, both of you, in front of all those people. I humiliated you, embarrassed you, treated you like you were something to be ashamed of." Marcus broke down then, sobbing like the little boy he used to be. Sarah immediately went to him, wrapping her arms around him the way she had when he was small and had fallen off his bike or had a nightmare. "I'm so sorry," he cried. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became someone who could say those things to you." I sat there watching my wife comfort our son, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that he was sorry, anger at what he had put us through, hope that maybe we could repair our relationship, and sadness for all the time we had lost. "I lost myself," Marcus continued. "I got so caught up in trying to impress Jessica and her family, trying to fit into their world, that I forgot who I really was. I forgot where I came from. I forgot that you two are the best people I know. We raised you to be proud of honest work," I said quietly. "We raised you to value character over status, integrity over image. I know. I knew it then too. But I was so desperate to belong in Jessica's world that I was willing to sacrifice everything, including my relationship with you, to get there." Sarah stroked his hair like she used to when he was sick. "We never wanted you to be ashamed of us, Marcus. We just wanted you to be happy." "I wasn't happy," Marcus said. "I thought I was, but I wasn't. I was stressed all the time, constantly worried about maintaining this image I had created. I couldn't relax, couldn't be myself around Jessica or her friends. I was living a lie, and it was exhausting." Over the next few hours, Marcus told us everything. How he had felt pressure to reinvent himself when he started dating Jessica. How he had gradually created a fictional version of his background to impress her family. How he had become trapped in his own lies, unable to come clean without risking everything he thought he wanted. "The worst part," he said, "is that when Jessica confronted me with the truth, when she told me what the investigator had found, I realized something. She said she might have been able to accept my background, but she couldn't accept someone who was dishonest and disloyal to his own family." "She was right," I said. "She was right," Marcus agreed. And I realized that in trying to become someone I thought was better, I had actually become someone much worse. I had become someone who would betray the people who loved him most, just to impress people who didn't really know him at all. The road to forgiveness was long and difficult. Trust, once broken, doesn't repair itself overnight. But over the following months, Marcus worked to prove that he had truly changed. He quit his job at the tech startup and became a social worker, saying he wanted to do meaningful work like we had taught him. He moved out of his expensive downtown apartment and rented a modest place closer to us. He started joining us for Sunday dinners again, and slowly, very slowly, we began to rebuild our relationship. It took 2 years before Sarah and I truly felt like we had our son back. 2 years of honest conversations, genuine apologies, and demonstrated change. But eventually we got there. Marcus never tried to create another false image of himself. When he started dating again, he introduced his girlfriend to us on their 3rd date. When he got promoted at the social services agency where he worked, he celebrated with us at our embarrassing old house, eating dinner off our 30-year-old plates. And when he got married 2 years later, it was a small ceremony in our backyard, with only close family and friends in attendance. His wife, Rebecca, was a public school teacher like me. She thought our house was charming, our furniture had character, and our simple lifestyle was admirable. Most importantly, she loved Marcus for who he really was, not for who he was pretending to be. The night before his wedding, Marcus sat with me on our back porch, looking out at the small yard where we had taught him to ride a bike, where we had played catch, where we had talked about his dreams and fears. "Dad," he said, "I want you to know that I'm proud to be your son. I'm proud of the values you and Mom taught me, even though I lost sight of them for a while. I'm proud of the work you do, the life you've built, the man you are." "Thank you, son," I said. "That means everything to me. I know I hurt you and Mom badly. I know I said things that can never be unsaid. But I want you to know that losing Jessica was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to confront who I had become and find my way back to who I really am." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, father and son, both of us understanding that some lessons can only be learned the hard way, and that sometimes you have to lose everything to appreciate what you always had. Our family was stronger now than it had ever been, built on a foundation of truth, forgiveness, and genuine love. And Marcus had learned the most important lesson of all, that there is nothing more valuable than being loved for exactly who you are. This story reminds us that authentic relationships are built on truth, not pretense. The love of family is worth more than the approval of strangers, and sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most valuable lessons about what truly matters in life.